Hey folks, welcome back to the next video in this series. This is going to be a quick video because I've done a bunch of work and I recorded it, but I didn't really want to post the video because, quite frankly, it's just incredibly boring. Um, so I just wanted to sort of recap what I've done, so at least there's some continuity when I move on to the next steps, and that is that I used the Claude AI agent in Writer to generate a ton of code for me. And this code was basically all foundation code to get the dynamic campaign to where I wanted it to sort of as an initial sort of framework. And essentially what it's done for me is the main thing it added for me was this Fox campaign objective class. And this is basically all the fixed um, sort of strategic objectives that are on the map. So this could be anything from, I think I put the types in here. Yeah, this could be air bases, cities, factories, bridge, port, supply depot. Basically, you see anything that's got a fixed spot on the map and that I want enemy or friendly forces to be able to capture or destroy or damage. Um, this is a class that encapsulates all of that. And then the AI generated for me a sort of an influence. It built this sort of graph of those objectives and connected them together with as they're like nodes so that we can perform supply flows from one to the other. And those supply lines can become broken depending on where certain forces are located. And each, enemy or friendly unit has a particular area of influence. And there's an influence map that encapsulates that. So, um, and then using that data, we're able to, there's a class here that calculates basically where the front line is on the map based on where all of the various units and um, where all the objectives are that each side controls. And that determines where the front line is at. And then um, I think that's the main things that were added. And then there's this campaign loader. And the idea behind this is that it's basically a bunch of structures and a class that loads um, all of the campaign data from a JSON file. So I had it build this for me, and it actually built me as well. It built me a file. Let me see if I can pull that up here. If I go into the content folder and go to app, not app, sorry. If I go into data and theaters, there's a JSON file here. And what I told it to build for me was a campaign based on the old like 1984 movie Red Dawn, where Russian forces sort of invade the southwestern U.S. from Mexico. And it built me this file. Let me open it up here. It built me this file that included, basically all the air bases in the cities and everything else in the area that I told it to use. And it built 1,000 kilometer by 1,000 kilometer area. And it doesn't have, you know, everything. It's basically, this is a sample file. And it also included several divisions for me. We've got 1st Armored Division, 1st Brigade Combat Team, 2nd Brigade. We've got 3rd Infantry Division, and it's a unit type mechanized. We've got all this stuff in here to start out with. And the red faction, of course, is going to be the Russian forces, and it's got, combined arms, tank division, and an air assault division loaded up. So it gave me everything I needed, really, to be able to sort of load a campaign from a file, and that's really where I wanted to get. And I'm going to start this up in debug mode just to sort of demonstrate what it's doing. So I'll wait for that to load. And while that's loading, I'll show one last thing I had to do. So this campaign loader uses the JSON types that are part of Unreal Engine. I don't think this particular class, no, it does. If we look at the C++ file for campaign loader, what it does is it takes in a string of JSON and it basically loads them using this FJSON object, which is a type in the Unreal Engine library. However, um, in order to use that type and do all this work with JSON, you do have to add in your build.cs file. I had to add these two modules in order to get everything to compile and link properly. So it's just something to be aware of. If you want to load and save JSON out, you do need those modules loaded. And that is another thing to mention about this loader is that it doesn't just load the files from into a campaign, it can also save. So as you play through the campaign and things change, you can save the updated status to a new file. It has the capability to do that. Now, when I had the AI generate effectively all of these classes, and then it also generated a bunch of the types, these campaign objective types and status. It generated all of that for me, and it did a pretty good job, but it wasn't perfect by any stretch of the imagination. I had to fix several little quirks in the code. I had to come and add these modules in myself because it wasn't smart enough to figure out that I needed those. And there was a bunch of, probably 5 or 6 little tweaks I had to make in the actual C++, things where it hadn't, loaded the right type or done something just a little bit quirky and it wasn't working right. It took me a good hour. It probably generated all of the code in a total of 10 minutes, but it took me a good hour to an hour and a half, maybe even a little bit longer to get the code into a place where it would compile and build properly. So don't be expecting perfection when you use AI, I guess is the main lesson there. Okay, so I've got the editor loaded now and I'm running in debug mode. So if I come in, I've got a couple breakpoints here. And if I start, and this is really right now the only way for me to test this because I don't have any sort of UI or anything to verify what's happening, but I can see that this load theater from file is firing and it's passing in that Red Dawn JSON file. And it's doing some magic here. This is one of the things I had to fix because it wouldn't find the file in the right place. And so I had to have it tweak this code so that it would work when the file's in the content folder. And I had to change some project settings as well to get this file to copy when I build it as a package. Works fine right now, but if I went and built it as a package without changing the project settings, it would not include this JSON file. So I had to update the project settings to tell it to include these directories. And now you can see that as it runs through the file, through the JSON, it's loading up the theater data. And it's going to, right here, it rolls through all the objectives. It loads each one. You can see the name, the type, everything's loading as it should. So I'm just going to F9 here. And when we get to the end, we can come look at this out theater data. And we can see that it's loading up all the divisions and the subunits. Everything's loading exactly like it should. And we just keep going here. And now it's going to take all of that data that it loaded in to those, it was sort of wrapper classes, right, for the file format. If we look at not campaign objective, sorry. If we look at campaign loader, there are a bunch of structs here, and these are structs that are just wrapping the JSON. And so we need to copy all this data. Now that we have it in these structs, we need to copy it into our objective, ground unit, division, brigade, battalion format. And that's what this apply theater data to campaign is going to do. And now if we look at theater data, actually, if we look at this, it's not really going to work very well, I don't think. We can look at these objectives and we should see, yeah, they are. All these objectives loaded correctly into our objectives array. And, all of the other data is there as well. All the divisions, brigades, everything's loaded now. And there's my machine running out of memory. So that's as far as I can go for now, because I don't have any sort of any sort of code that actually does anything with that data, right? So the next steps are going to be probably, I guess, to build some sort of UI where you start the game and you get a menu and you say start campaign, and when you start the campaign, it loads up the campaign. It loads you into some sort of a screen where you can see the current situation. I think that's my next goal. But before I started on that, and I'll get on that today or tomorrow. But before I did that, I just wanted to make sure I did something to show what the AI did for me there. I didn't want to do a whole video because it was incredibly boring. It would have been boring to watch, and even this one is probably as well very boring. But I didn't want to move on to the next step without at least showing what I had done in order to get the campaign working. So the campaign is now loading up, all the data is loading up, and the next step is going to be some sort of UI where you can join or start a campaign. So that's my goal next time. So until then, thank you for watching. Take care.